Hi everyone, this is bonus block number 4. It's called a friendship block and it's the final one in our 2020 block of the month challenge. So you're going to start off by creating your half square triangles, your HST. You have a 4.5 inch square that you're going to set aside. That's from your third fabric. You have 2 squares in number 3 fabric that are 4 7/8, and you have 2 squares in the number 2 fabric that are 4 7/8, and that's what you're going to use to make your 4.5 inch half square triangles. I won't dwell on this because we've done it several times throughout the block of the month, but as usual, you're going to put the fabric good sides together. You have your diagonal line drawn down the center, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on each side of that diagonal line. Place your ruler right on that line, that draw line, and we're going to cut right down it. And now we have 2 half square triangles. You want to press these open, putting your seam allowance towards the darker fabric so it doesn't show through. I'm just finger pressing these for now, but as I assemble my block, I will go back and press them properly. I like to do a lot of pressing to get a really nice flat block with good seams. So I'm just going to trim off these little dog ears. There we go. That makes it easier to sew your seams when you don't have these extra dog ears, these extra pieces of fabric. There we go. So now we have 4 half square triangles with the darkest fabric and with the second fabric. And now all we have to do is lay out our block. So this 4.5 inch square will be our center point. We're going with fabric number 2 for the corners. You want your darker fabric to be pointing out and away. And you're going to put 1 on each corner. Again, pointing away, like that. That's important to the pattern. You don't want, if you sew one the wrong way, the pattern is gone. So you want to make sure that you're pointing them away from the center, the darker color. And then we'll take our other 4 half square triangles. This one, let's put the ones that are really pressed. This one is going to lay with the darker fabric on the right, the darker fabric towards the bottom, the darker fabric up, the opposite of your top one on your bottom row, and the opposite of the right side on the left. So I need to press these 2, of course, so they lay flat. And that's how we lay out our block. This block is called a friendship block, as I mentioned earlier. Often you'll see it with just background fabric on the 4 outside corners, but I like this variation of the fabric of the friendship block. I think it's pretty with the extra color on the corners. So I'm going to press these 2 before I assemble these 2 rows. But for now, all we're going to do is assemble. You'll see we have no nesting to do. I'll put my seam along this side, and then I'll add this one on this side. On this side, I will have to nest these seams up at the top to make sure my point stays nice. I'll get that sewn and I'll be back to show it to you. And here's the row. My seams are all pressed. I've pressed these seams on the top row towards the outside. You can see that my point is nicely nested. Nesting your points is so important so that you don't lose the nice triangle shapes on your quilt. So I'm going to press the square and then I'll assemble. On the center row you don't have any nesting to do because your center square is plain. So I'm just going to fold that over. So this one, and then add the second one. And on this one, I'm going to press my seams towards the center. And here's our center row with my seams pressed towards the center. That's going to line up beautifully. And our bottom row, I'll press the seam. And then I'll attach these two end panels. And once again, I'll have nesting to do on this corner, but there's no nesting on this side. And my bottom row is done. And there we go. That's how easy this is, our 3 rows. The most important part of this block is making sure that you place your squares properly. If you turn anything around, it's not going to look like the pattern at all. So you want to be sure that you place them properly. Okay, so now we're going to add our top row to the center. And for that, we want to be sure that we're nesting our seams. It's very important. I will cut this off before I sew so that I have a clear view of it. We're going to line our seams up so we have one to the left, one to the right, and they're butted right up against each other and they feel nice and flat. You're not feeling any lumps. I like to put a pin in it until I get going on the sewing machine so it doesn't move while I bring it. And again, this one, make sure it's butted nice and flat, and I'll add another pin. That looks good. Okay, so we're just going to sew our 1/4 inch seam straight across. Make sure that's straight. Straight across, open it up and press it nice and flat. No dragging the iron because you don't want to stretch your fabric. You want to press it nice and flat. I'll be back. And here's our top and center row. And you can see how nicely they're nested. The points are lining up perfectly. Nesting is so important. And now we're going to attach our bottom row. As always, I can't stress enough how important it is to nest those seams. So one to the right, one to the left, butted right up against each other and super flat. I'll put another pin in it to make sure it stays. And we'll line this one up too. One to the right, one to the left. I'll trim away that excess thread before I sew so I can get a nice neat finish. And then we'll sew our 1/4 inch seam right along and we'll be done with this block. And here we are, our finished block. I'm going to clean up all the threads and make sure everything is squared up nice to 12.5 inches, and I'll be done. So I really hope you're going to enjoy this final block, our friendship block. Thank you for participating in this block of the month challenge. I've really enjoyed making these blocks with you and seeing how beautifully you create them all. If you haven't participated in our block of the month challenge, it's never too late. You can find everything you need in my Facebook group called Stitch It with CRICUT. I hope you'll come join us. Thank you for watching.